Today I am going to be reviewing Kross's Don't Skip the Great Divide video. Now, I do not agree with just skipping episodes and stuff like that, unless it is A, you already watched the show and you just want to get to like episodes you like and stuff like that, or B, there's kind of already material it is adapting, and it's like filler episodes, like, anime like Naruto, Dragon Ball. I agree with skipping filler episodes and stuff like that. But if you're just watching it for the first time ever, for the most part, I do not agree with it. But, I don't really care much since it's not, if it's not really important to the plot, I don't really care much if other people don't, don't watch it or skip it. So I rewatched the Great Divide episode to see so I can better refresh my memory. I want to see what his argument for why you should not skip the Great Divide.
Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 1, Episode 11, The Great Divide, is widely considered by the fanbase to be the worst episode of the show, with many arguing that it's best to just skip the episode altogether. I mean, even the creators knew it sucked. They lampshaded it in the recap episode.
Look, it's the Great Divide, the biggest canyon in the Earth Kingdom.
Let's keep flying.
Now, no one is saying this episode is great, and I won't be in this video, but
Wait, hold on, pause. So you said you won't say it's a great episode. So now I want to know, what could possibly be your argument for not skipping this episode? Because, well, I don't know if you're saying if you think it's great or not. But, apparently that's not your argument. So what could you possibly say? Because it's not important to the show. You can skip it, no problem. And it doesn't add to anything. But let's see what
this whole "you can just skip the Great Divide altogether" idea has been just passively floating around the Avatar community for years and years is absolutely unacceptable to me. First of all, I think the Great Divide helps the pacing of Book 1 overall. Immediately preceding it is Imprisoned, The Winter Solstice, Parts 1 and 2, The Waterbending Scroll, and Jet, a pretty heavy batch of episodes overall, so I think giving the audience some lighter, less serious adventuring was appropriate before launching into the storm. The Great Divide also gives us some of the first discussions we hear about Earth spirits, reinforcing the lore of this world.
Hold on. Why? Wait, reinforcing the lore of this world. So, this is stuff. So, okay, reinforcement means it's already there. And why does it need to be why do we need this episode to reinforce it? Because all it is there are these Earth spirits. They carve out this canyon, moving on, and that doesn't come back anytime in the future. So why do we need to watch this for it to reinforce it?
Reinforces the requirement of physical movement in bending when the
Again, what? Every time a bender, every time an earthbender or any bender comes, they kind of always move their move around, move their arms and limbs to do their bending. That's pretty. So why would we need this episode to reinforce that? This is the first time. This episode directly mentions it, talks about it. But we've seen, other times where a bender is tied up and can't move. I can't remember if this is before or after this episode, but when after this episode, the solstice, where Zuko is tied up by those earthbend, or no, not Zuko, Iroh, when he's tied up by those earthbenders, and he couldn't use his bending because of that. Why do we need this episode to reinforce it? I don't know. It's like we already we're already seeing other benders doing this like pretty much every episode. It's just not okay. It's not directly stated, but before and after, and like quickly after this, we've seen where like benders are like tied up or like can't move their limbs and can't do their bending. So again, we don't need to watch this episode for it to reinforce that.
The canyon guide becomes unable to earthbend after breaking his arms, and it's the first time we see refugees of the Earth Kingdom traveling to Ba Sing Se for protection from the Fire Nation, planting the seeds of how important the capital city is in this war an entire season before we'll go there ourselves. But most importantly, the Great Divide is absolutely worth your time because of the Ganjin and Zhang flashback sequences.
Hey, okay, let's see
To explain their shared history to Sokka and Katara, respectively, the show switches to a completely different art style for each side of the story. The first of the two is the Ganjin tribe, whose perspective is represented in an art style that takes influence from Vampire Hunter D, an anime film from 1985 adapted from the novel series of the same name,
Okay,
which would
so
later get a sequel film in 2000 called Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Its
Okay,
art style is very crisp, moody, and sharp, which is appropriate for the refined, polished nature of the Ganjin. On the other hand, the Zhang's telling of their past is extremely geometric, proportionally warped, and high contrast. This art style was done as an even more direct homage to the anime film Dead Leaves, a 2004 production IG movie which is the brainchild of Hiroyuki Imaishi. These scenes are some of the most overt examples in the entire Avatar series of the crew wearing their love for anime on their sleeve.
wait, okay, is that your own? Okay, so you bring up that the art style matches like the personality or the way the people telling them live, but like why? Okay, that's one thing, but like why are you bringing this up as like a necessary like you're bringing this up like this is your main argument? That like, but maybe I'm jumping the gun. Let's see.
There was some Vampire Hunter D inspiration. There was some Dead Leaves inspiration in there.
Up there with Aang dressing up as Goku from Dragon Ball Z and Vash from Trigun. Certainly the most overt example at this point in the show. Everyone knows Avatar was influenced by anime, but
Okay, wait, is that like it's like the anime, like it's referencing or using animation from these two specific anime. Why is that? Okay, what if you don't like anime? What if you never watched those animes? Now what? Like I don't see how that has anything to do with why you should not you skip it. Like you shouldn't skip it. Like if that is not something you care about, why should you why should you watch it? Like that's not really a positive. Like for me, like I don't really care if okay, I don't really care if it's a reference to something else. That's not a positive for me. Okay, like it's Avatar's referencing like anime. That's like okay. Now what? So what? How does that add to the quality or someone's wantingness to want to watch this whole episode for that 2 minute of flashback referencing it?
I think that despite the series being nearly 2 decades old and still relevant and beloved, only a very small portion of its extremely passionate fan community understands or is even interested in understanding how much anime is infused into the very DNA of Avatar.
Like, why should their interest? Why should they be interested? Like, why should they care about that though? Okay, they drew some inspiration. So what? Like, how does that add to its quality, or why you should like Avatar, or this episode, or anything like that? Like, again, if you do not care about anime, then your whole argument is kind of moot. Like, it does not matter.
To people who do know, it seems obvious, but my problem is that there aren't enough of you. My problem is that on a video with 500,000 views specifically made for the purpose of talking about every relevant aspect of this episode, I have to scroll down to the dozenth comment on that video to see anyone even acknowledge the radical shift in animation style. And I have to read the response to that comment to find someone pointing out what that animation style is a direct reference to. So let's do some
Again, why does this... Again, like, I do not see... Like, this, how this... Again, I don't see how this has to do with this specific episode. Okay, it's like, it made a 2-minute reference to like a few minute, like a small reference to something. I don't think that's enough for someone to watch a whole episode, like a whole episode, to go, hey, I know that. Why? Like, especially since, like, okay, you're disregarding the quality of the episode. You say you're not going to talk about how good the episode is. So you really okay with just, like, ignoring how bad an episode is? You're just going to trudge through it simply because it made, like a reference to something? Like, I cannot understand that mindset.
exploring, shall we? As I just mentioned, the more overtly referential of the two flashback sequences in The Great Divide, that of the Zhangs, was pulling from Hiroyuki Imaishi's Dead Leaves. But his influence on the Avatar crew was not nearly isolated to just this scene. Imaishi was one of the key creative forces on one of the Avatar team's favorite anime, Fooly Cooly. In fact, in a Q&A, Avatar director Giancarlo Volpe said,
Fooly Cooly was a huge one. We all were like ordered to buy Fooly Cooly and watch every single episode of it.
Yeah, so you know how Aang's eyes glow white when he enters the Avatar state? That super iconic thing he only does a handful of times throughout the whole show? That was inspired by the glowing white eyes of Fooly Cooly's 12-year-old protagonist, Naota, in its final episode.
Okay, so what? What does this have to do with anything with the great, like, why you should not skip The Great Divide? Like, this is just tying into, okay, it's like a reference to something. Again, like, how? Like, I can understand this.
All those hyper-stylized facial expressions, including the most iconic one from The Great Divide, pretty safe bet that those were at least partially inspired by Fooly Cooly.
I mean, maybe, but, like, those just seem like, you know, like just normal anime overreaction stuff. Like, you kind of see that stuff in almost any anime.
I'd even bet that the fan-favorite cut where Sokka says,
Yeah, bending slice! And we're on our way!
comes from this scene in episode 2 of Fooly Cooly, where the shot is framed in the reflection of Kanti, a robot's CRT television head. It has the fisheye effect, very similar framing. Sokka and Haruko...
Yeah, we're like 4 minutes into this like 5 minutes into this video, and he's barely talked about the actual episode. So far, it's just, hey, they brought up stuff, but not... God, what was the word he used again? Reestablish? Okay. They brought up stuff that's already been brought up in the show. It's been reestablished. They... Like, the Gin thing have, like, different art style in their storytelling. And that's it. Like, that's it. Like, the art styles are... Like, I don't know. Like,
both animate very choppily, and Naota and Katara make almost identical faces in reaction to what Haruko and Sokka are doing.
I mean, I guess, but, like, that just seems like a, you know, like a normal, like, I'm disappointed in you face, or like, you know, his weird face, you know, that doesn't really seem unique to this anime you're showing.
This one is also unconfirmed, but you cannot convince me that this shot from behind Aang as he stands on top of a rock while Katara narrates that she believes Aang can save the world was not directly pulled from this shot in Fooly Cooly where Mamimi looks up at Naota from behind in admiration of him before snapping a picture of the moment. It's like she's going, wow, this is iconic. I gotta get a shot of this. And the Avatar crew was like, damn Mamimi, you right as hell.
Okay, again. So what? Like, we're like 5 minutes into this video. When are you gonna actually talk about the episode and why we should not skip it? Like, you have not really brought up many points.
Oh. Co-creators Brian Konietzko and Michael Dante DiMartino especially have explicitly pointed out that they were fans of anime studios like Gainax, which produced
How much is
Furikuri
he
along
gonna
with production
focus on?
IG.
They
These
make
two studios
references.
also cooperated on the
Almost
end of
none of this has anything to do with like the actual anime. Even if like, okay, you want to focus on the animation, like
Evangelion, a 1997 movie following the 26-episode TV anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion. In Evangelion, the main characters fight aliens called Angels with giant mecha robots called Evas, and it is confirmed that King Bumi's character design was inspired by the hunched, long-limbed bodies of the Evas. And Heibai, the forest spirit who first appears in Book 1, Episode 7, had his design inspired by the Angels. More on the topic of character designs, Cowboy Bebop, which needs no introduction even to Western audiences, gave Avatar co-creator Brian Konietzko inspiration to draw his own group of futuristic, fantastical space-traveling companions, consisting of a robot Cyclops monkey with an arrow on his head holding a staff, a morose-looking balding human man in his 40s wearing a futuristic outfit, and a bipedal polar bear dog hybrid. After revisiting the sketch sometime later, he would refine it, switching around accessories and elements such that they more resembled who we now know as Aang, Appa, and potentially Momo. Bebop's main character, Spike Spiegel, also inspired the design of Jet, which just makes so much sense it hurts. Like, knowing that they were thinking of Spike when making Jet reinforces so much about everything to do with Jet's character, which I go into more depth about here, but it gets into some pretty spoilery territory that isn't necessary for the point of this video, so I'll just leave it there. Cowboy Bebop was directed by Shinichiro Watanabe, who also directed Samurai Champloo, another of his anime which became especially popular among Western audiences, including Brian Konietzko. By the way, one of the protagonists of Samurai Champloo, Fu, has a flying squirrel for a pet named Momo. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe, as well as the battle between Mera cuts through the rain with her splur, evading all his gua. But the way that I found was that the one in pop up in Medio Bones, who are responsible for 2 episode 11, the desert. And the scene I'm talking about is the last one in the episode, wherein Aang finds out that Sandbenders captured and sold ops to Trust, the antagonists, are going to have him sacrifice many human lives to his but the extremely similar to anime work, but they may have not even known who he was at the time, because I cannot find a single instance of the end of their respective episodes, and the fact that this would only
okay, finally back on the actual episode. Like 10 minutes of just talking about they make reference to other anime on this. Why you should not skip the Great Divide episode, like video, like half of this has nothing to do with the actual title of the video.
That got very funny how the Avatar team seemingly was so... I cannot find Imaishi's work, but they may have not even known who he was at the time, because I cannot find a single instance of anyone who worked on Avatar even saying his name. Kind of cool that he was so clearly being recognized by other animators before he went on to direct the works that he exclusively discussed how anime Western was believing that serialized storytelling would be economically infeasible. Studio were lots of shows that were very episodic, and this was largely the result of cartoon studios at the time believing that serialized storytelling would be economically infeasible. In fact, Giancarlo Volpe, episode director of The Great Divide, has pointed out that because The Great Divide was one of the few completely self-contained stories in Avatar, Nickelodeon aired it much more frequently than others for this very reason, possibly contributing to the negative reception of the episode via oversaturation.
It wasn't just Nickelodeon.
I mean, like, maybe, but like, you know, if people thought it was bad and it would be playing over and over again, like, you can't, like, show me something like, okay, like a comment or Reddit post saying, you know, I like the episode, but, you know, they can't, like, Nickelodeon kept showing it over and over again, so I'm starting to dislike it. You can't just say, oh, maybe it, you know, it contributed to it. You kind of, you know, I don't agree with, like, you just saying that.
A lot of animation studios and networks thought, oh, this continuity-based storytelling kills us in the ratings. Yeah. So Great Divide was their prize episode where the fact that it is fillery...
It's a standalone episode.
It's a standalone.
Unconnected.
So they were like, this is the episode we're going to air all the time. So in some weird way, I don't mind if people are annoyed with The Great Divide because it was kind of marketing's fault.
The fact that The Great Divide stands out so much in the memories of fans who watched Avatar as it was airing or during the reruns may have also been because it was a completely episodic story surrounded by a much more serialized show. That serialization, of course, came from anime.
I mean, what about the other, like, you know, standalone stories, like that fortune teller? I don't see, like, many people, like, talking about that. You know, I'm talking about, you know, how bad that is. Because, like, how standalone it is. Like, you know, there's, like, the one where, like, Aang was, like, made a party at, like, the Fire Nation. You know, at the Fire Nation with, like, a bunch of other students. I don't see other people talking about that. Again, show me, like, a comment or show me, like, a comment or Reddit post that says, hey, this is good, but it's surrounded by all this story stuff.
and it was one of, if not the biggest reason Avatar was such a landmark in Western cartoons. Uncountable biggest reason Avatar serialization, of course, came from anime, and it was one of, if not the biggest reason that serialization, of course, came from anime. And
serialization came from anime? What? What are you talking about? Like, there's, like, okay, for, like, one thing, not all anime is serialized. It's, like, completely 100% serialized, like, like Pokemon. Like, that's, like, a big anime. I know that it took inspiration from anime, but where are you getting that the serialization came from anime? Because there are many cartoons that are also serialized as well.
And it was one of, if not the biggest reason Avatar was such a landmark in Western cartoons. Uncountable numbers of fans have expressed how Avatar was the first cartoon they watched which developed a world they were captivated by and wanted to learn more about. One that could have more resonant character.
Okay, well, it came. Okay, so. Okay, wait, hold on. Again, what does all of this have to do with Don't Skip the Great Divide? We are more than halfway through, and he barely talked about the actual episode. Secondly, where are you getting this from? Can you bring up like a Reddit post or a comment or something that's talking about that? But okay, maybe it is the world building, but it could just be, oh hey, it's like just a good story with good characters. Like, I like the fights are good. Maybe it's like what you said, like it's serial. It's like a serialized story, right? It's like the world built.
Captivated by and wanted to was the first cartoon they watched which developed a world they were captivated by and wanted to learn more.
The first one that developed a world that they were What do you mean by developed a world? You mean like, okay, there were like a bunch of stuff in this one? And like, what do you say? Like, it's the first one like the first cartoon they watched that had like developed the world. Like I am not
more about. One that could have more resonant character arcs and more meaningful themes. And would you believe it, anime also had a huge effect on those arcs and themes. Once again, this is one of the more well-known influences on Avatar, but it cannot be overstated how important the work of Studio Ghibli and specifically the work of Hayao Miyazaki was to the creation of Avatar. It's been confirmed that Miyazaki's sensibilities rubbed off on Brian and Michael, and it is very clear when placing their works side by side. The anthropomorphization of nature being used to promote environmentalist philosophy,
what? Like, anime is not the only things that do this. Like, that do that stuff. There are, like, more, like, anime and Avatar, like, are not, like, the only things that, like, do that sort of thing. Like, why would they need to... Like, it feels weird to, like, say, oh, they, like, can you show me, like, a quote they said that specifically state, oh, their, like, environmentalist thing comes specifically from anime.
Insistence on giving antagonists understandable motivations that...
What? Okay, what villain does not have understandable motivation? Now, when it's like it's good or anything like that, like not like a thing unique to anime that you can pull from. There are like other cartoons that have villains that like have like understandable, like what's an understandable like reason to do the things you do, because that's not, it's not just, oh, I feel bad for you. It's not, oh, hey, I want money. Okay, that's understandable. Oh, I want world domination. It's like, okay, that's understand. Like, there's a difference. Like, are you? I mean, maybe you mean like, like, what villain does not have understandable like, reasons to be evil or do the things they do.
Just happen to conflict with the protagonists rather than simply having them be pure evil. Themes of
Wait, what?
happen to conflict with the protagonists rather than simply having them be pure evil. That just have this philosophy, the insistence on giving antagonists understandable motivations that just happen to conflict with the protagonists rather than simply having them be pure evil.
What? Those are not. What? I'm confused. Like what? Hold on. Motivation
That just happen to conflict with the persistence on giving antagonists understandable motivations that just happen to conflict with the protagonists.
Understand motivations that happen to conflict to the main. What do you mean? Just happen to conflict with the main protagonist? Okay, like Zuko's whole thing is, hey, it's specifically that I want to go against the Avatars. Not, oh, it happens to conflict with them. No. Again, all the funny thing is, hey, let's get the Avatar so we can achieve our goals. But, ignoring that, again, that is not, like, something you can just pull from anime. Like, that's not something, that's not, like, that's just, like, a normal thing. Okay, like, I just don't understand what you're trying to say here. Understandable motivation that happen to conflict with the main protagonist, and they're not just, those are not like two contradictory things. Like understandable and pure evil and stuff like that. Like, are not really like two like contradicting things. Like, you can be understandable and pure. Like, understandable doesn't mean you agree with them or think what they're doing is good or that they should do it. Like, just because you know why someone do something does not mean like I don't understand what you're trying to say here. And once again, what does any of these have to do with why you should not skip the Great Divide? What does this have to do with anything to the topic of the video?
Rather than simply having
This is like clickbait at this point.
Or evil, themes of anti-war, etc. And yes, plenty
Beams of anti-war. That's been like that's not a thing unique to anime.
of visual parallels. Koizilla, aka Aang, spiritually fused with La, the ocean spirit, looks very much like the Nightwalker form of the forest spirit in...
Okay, like, oh my god, this is just an Avatar makes references to anime. What does...
Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke. Ko, the Face Stealer, bears resemblance in design and in name to No Face from Spirited Away. This is another long shot, but in the director's commentary for the finale of Book 2 of Avatar, Crossroads of Destiny, the cave prison that Katara and Zuko end up in had the green crystals covering its floors and walls inspired by some pictures from some anime, according to DiMartino. Knowing that he's a huge Miyazaki fan, I'd say he might have been looking at the glowing rock crystals from Castle in the Sky. They talk about how to make something look like it's glowing. A good technique is to...
I'm just gonna fast forward again, like hoping he actually gets the topic of the video. Like, this is just clickbait at this point.
Darken everything else in the frame, and that's exactly how these crystals and castles in the sky are revealed. So, if possible, back in the realm of confirmed Ghibli influences, Miyazaki's My Neighbor Totoro influenced the character designs of Appa, and directed by Isao Takahata is also an art style which Avatar dips into occasional super deformed or chibi art style that the Avatar shorts, which were included in the DVD release of Avatar, were animated in. This is also an art style which Avatar dips into occasionally throughout the series for the first time in The Great Divide during the sequence where Aang tells his fabricated version of the Zhang and Ganjin's history. Now, you may have noticed that much of what Avatar drew from was contemporary anime at the time. I've discussed almost nothing that came out more than 10 years before Avatar, but I think that the team's appreciation for anime may have gone a lot deeper than the shows and movies that were appealing to Western sensibilities anyway. That's the name for these single cells that are Gibbies at some point because they make their way based off of those in opinion, defined. And the fact that he's talking about what they were pulling from here, especially because this scene in Avatar is depicting a wrestling match breaking down the history influence from. And on top of that, the respect for the medium's history and anime are just so authentic. Over the past decade, with studios from East and West both taking more and more cues from each other, has reminded audiences around the world the global perspective of what animation could be. And this is why, despite recent efforts to make a lot without animation, is an ill-advised one, and almost by definition makes it impossible for the successor to achieve what the original did so well. I would so much rather watch a live-action telling of a totally unique story in the Avatar universe than a recreation of one that's very foundation was the meaty Shinichiro Watanabe juice. How will Sagi abides with he's about why I love Avatar. And Avatar was inspired by so much more than just anime. The reason I focus on anime is because out of everything Avatar pulls from, it's what I know the most about and I feel I can spread the most knowledge of. I would be very eager to learn about the other artists and mediums that influence this show, which I love so much, from people who are as...
Wait, what did you say?
About and I feel I can spread the most knowledge of. I would be very eager to learn about the other artists and mediums that influence this show, which I love so much, from people who are as into them as I am into anime. Here's a video I enjoyed by the Canapa Effect, which provides an introduction on Avatar's production history.
I misunderstood something.
You have not 2, not 3, but 4 different art styles in this amazing
actual information. People to tug on that little string of curiosity when you notice something interesting for them, but it's unusual in a show. On that little string of curiosity when you notice something interesting or unusual in a show. Both because it's just an incredibly rewarding and enriching process to learn how the things you love are made, often in ways that deepen your love for them, but it also gives credit to the people responsible for making the thing you love, and the people who inspired them, and the people who inspired them.
Again, what does this have to do with skipping the Great Divide? Everything you said applies to every... So by what you're saying, this applies to every single episode of the show. So this episode is not unique for doing that. So you have not really brought up a single thing about this episode for why you should not skip it.
So go, do your own research and get back to me with all the cool stuff you find that I didn't touch on in this video. I'm sure there is plenty more I didn't mention or couldn't find the source for. For example, I have a hunch that legendary anime director, screenwriter, and animator Masaaki Yuasa may have influenced Avatar in some way, because there's more than a few cuts in Avatar that look like his style, and he animated for My Neighbor's... However, similar to places I looked for recent of Studio Ghibli films, so I'll put a link to the playlist of that video series.
Man, this was like 20 minutes of nothing. Like, seriously. Like, this is just clickbait. He barely talked about the actual title. What? I do not care about references. That has nothing to do with why I would want to watch something. And especially if I don't know the references, and I don't care about anime, so you've done nothing. You've basically said nothing for 20 minutes.